Okay, my name is Jeff Anderson, and I have to my left Pat Wall. Pat is a former monk and priest at St. Johns Abbey, and to his left is co-counsel Mike Bryant. This morning we filed another case against St. Johns Abbey. In this case, it involves a monk and a priest by the name of Michael Bick, B-I-K. And what is so alarming about this is that Michael Bick has been known to have been an offender when he was first a teacher at St. Stephen's and a deacon, and then St. Odelia's, both in the Twin Cities, and then became a monk and a priest. And he continued to offend at St. John's Prep School, where he was working with teenagers. For months and years, we've been filing cases against St. John's Abbey. And for months and weeks and years, they've been saying that all of these cases go back so far to somewhere before 1980. The abuse of Doe 497, who filed this case, who's now in his early 30s, was in the year 1998. He was a student at the prep school, and Michael Bick promised to confirm him if he'd have sex with him, and only if he would. That in itself is alarming. But what's even more disturbing and reckless is the very time the Doe 497 is being abused in 1998, St. John's Abbey and the then headmaster, then abbot Timothy Kelly, had received a report that Michael Bick had abused two other kids. Let's put it up, Stacy. Two other kids, and performed oral sex and required him to masturbate him in the 1970s. At the very time that Doe was being abused, they had learned that Bick had abused in the 1970s. They also learned from Bick, his lips to the abbot's ears, that he admitted it. And in this memo, they say they're concerned about the timing of what this information is in 1998. Go to the next page. The timing is that it's the start of the school year. So they're thinking about what does it look like, not about the kids. The next page, they say, Bick says, I swear to you, there has never been any sexual encounter with anyone since I joined the monastery. That means I admitted having done it as a teacher, as a deacon, for years before, but since I became a monk, I didn't do it. His perceptions, and that is Abbot Kelly's perceptions, are, Michael at no time denied anything I had presented to him. He also, and this impresses me, offered to tell me of another individual, and this was not at my abiding. So he's admitting that he had done it. And what do? The same thing they've been doing for years, denying, deflecting, and now deceiving. And they moved him to the monastery and took him very quietly out of the prep school. And on September 3rd, 1998, all they did was the abbot is take Bick out of the monastery, out of the prep school, and put him in the monastery and kind of put him aside without telling anybody, without warning the public, without warning the parents, without telling the police or reporting it to them, even though they are what we call mandated reporters because they're in education, and the law requires them to report this in 1998. What did they choose to do? They chose to keep it quiet and quietly move Bick to the monastery for, quote, health reasons, later sending them to treatment. What's so reckless and so alarming about this is that they continue to deny that any of the allegations of any of the abuse by any of the monks or the priests are more recent in time. And there's an internal memo that they just released to all employees at St. John's and all contributors and donors, presumably, and everybody else they're trying to deceive, saying that there is no incident of sexual abuse of a minor by a monk at St. John's has occurred in more than a quarter century. It's a lie. We proved it a lie 2 weeks ago. We proved it a lie 3 weeks ago. This lawsuit and this account and these documents show it to be another lie. So we're dealing with deep denial, serious deflection, and now widespread deceit. Widespread deceit. This memo about it not having occurred in the last quarter century was issued today. Today. From the abbot's office and the abbot's spokesman. Today. This report and this admission of Bick having abused kids in his past was 1998. The very time Doe 497, who now has brought this suit, was being abused. And he was continued to be abused till and through that year, through September. As they were moving Bick quietly to the monastery, as they were misrepresenting why they were taking him out of the prep school, as they were choosing not to report to the police or Stearns County as they're required to by law, as they're withholding this information from the parents, from the public, from the people that needed to know, and they made the choice to lie and to conceal. And they continue to make that choice to lie and conceal and deceive the police, the public, the parishioners, the loyal at St. John's, and of course imperil the kids. So that makes them reckless. And the problem is, it's not just the abbots in the past, it is also Abbot John Clausen, who's the current abbot, who at one time I had praised as having been a leader in stepping forward and out of the shadows and getting what I thought was transparent and accountable. This is so far from transparent and accountable, it's deeply disturbing and very sad. So when I add him to this board, I call it, when it comes to child protection, this is the bad abbots board. Every single one of these conceived and concealed and deceived, and now John Clausen is rightfully added to this board. And it's with great sadness and sorrow that we are required again to make information known that they have known for so long. And how reckless and alarming this is. To know that now this 33-year-old who came to us just last week and under the Child Victims Act is allowed to find his voice, share his secret, and now confront a harsh and painful reality. And the truth becomes a part of our past, a lie becomes a part of the future. And when it comes to St. John's and this issue, the lie is now. The lie has been. And the lie will continue to be until they are held fully accountable. And I praise and applaud this John Doe for coming forward. Under the Child Victims Act, there are now how many days left, Mike Bryant?
There are 16 days left.
There are 16 days left under the Child Victims Act for survivors to come forward. You'll hear more from Mike Bryant about that. But before you do, Pat Wall as a former monk, as a former priest, as somebody who is in the culture at St. John's. What say you about what you see here?
Well, what scares me the most is that we cannot change the past. We know that every single one of those abbots, including John Clausen, all specifically chose to take a perpetrator that they knew about and put him back in ministry. That's the past. But what the present is that we have 6 alleged perpetrators on campus. We've got 2 alleged perpetrators that are floating around the Twin Cities with dangerous proclivities. None of these guys are being actively observed. None of them are being actively supervised. And they can't control themselves. When you look at Michael Bick's St. Luke report, or from the Human Sexuality Clinic at the U of M, the man has pedophilic tendencies. He cannot control himself. He is unable to have normal control that the rest of us have of ourselves. That's why these guys are so dangerous, because they can strike on first contact with kids. St. John's is very different. Those of us who are alumni of St. John's, there are now 6th graders on campus. The prep school is now 6 through 12. We have a much larger campus than there was before. So we've got perpetrators going around unsupervised. The person who was in charge of supervision was removed last fall for his own allegations.
That was Tom Andert.
And you have 6 guys that are actively on campus with nothing to do. Now, at St. John's, you have to realize things are so close. I mean, the prep school dormitory for the boys is 100 yards from the monastery. The university is wide open. The same with the girls' dorm, which is now the old seminary that alumni will remember. There are young children on campus with perpetrators and an extremely ineffective, if not disabled, supervision system that they have at St. John's. That's what scares me. We don't want the past to be the future. We want the future to be completely different so that kids can have a safe education at St. John's.
Mike Bryant, what say you about this, and what needs to be done now?
There are 16 days left until the statute runs. The example we've got here with this lawsuit is someone who came forward last week. We know from the phone calls, we know from the contacts we're getting that there are people out there that are trying to make the decision. What should they do? 16 days left to do something about that. And it does make a difference. We keep pushing with these files that we keep getting, the information we get out there. It makes a difference. So in these next 16 days, the people who saw things, who suffered things, who suspected things need to come forward to make that difference. And it's not an easy decision. But if you know somebody who's struggling with this choice, the person can be sued out as a John Doe, and there's a difference that can be made. Thank you.
And so for the boys and girls, now adults, men and women who have suffered in silence for years, the clock is ticking. And there is a time, just like John Doe 497, for him and others who have been abused to come forward, but they have to act now. And there is also hope, because you can take your power back and have your truth believed and validated through our legal system, because the courthouse doors are open for a short period of time. The thing that is so alarming today and so deeply sorrowful is the level of denial, the institutional denial that St. John's has been adhering to. In the last 3 weeks, in the 4 suits that we brought, they denied responsibility for Tom Andert, for Tim Backus, both of whom are in active ministry. They deny responsibility for past failures. And they continue to deflect responsibility, trying to blame others or the victims. And finally, the reckless level of deceit that is so prominent and evident here, that in 1998, Bick is admitting having abused kids at the very time this kid, Doe 497, is being abused. At the same time, they quietly moved Bick out of the prep school into another location, and only the abbot knows. and only Bick knows. And until this day, nobody else did, besides those inside the clerical culture, and that is the abbots. And so it's that level of recklessness and deceit that is so disturbing, so dangerous, and so alarming. And so we have to act now, and survivors that have been abused have to come forward now and know that there is hope and there is a chance for recovery of power, and the courthouse doors are open for a short period of time. Thank you all.